Imagine someone pulling back the curtain on politics and showing you everything rulers would rather keep hidden. The lies, the tricks, the strategies that let them keep power, while the rest of us are left believing in the show. That's exactly what Niccolò Machiavelli did when he wrote The Prince in the early 1500s. On the surface, the book looks like a guide for rulers, how to win, how to dominate, how to outsmart rivals. But read carefully, and you realize something else. Machiavelli wasn't just talking to princes. He was also talking to us. The dangerous part? What he revealed is knowledge we're not supposed to have. We're not supposed to know that leaders use fear on purpose. We're not supposed to know that morality is often just a mask. We're not supposed to know that appearances are crafted, promises are disposable, and power is built on manipulation as much as it is on strength. To know these things makes you harder to control. And that's why Machiavelli's words still feel like a warning whispered. Across time, this is how power really works. Don't be fooled. In this video, we'll dig deep into that warning. We'll look at Machiavelli's world and why he wrote the way he did. We'll explore the shocking advice of the prince and the double meanings hidden inside it. We'll break down his views on fear, morality, appearances, and the paradox of truth-telling. And finally, we'll bring it into today's world, where politics, media, and power still echo the same patterns Machiavelli laid bare 500 years ago. Machiavelli in historical context. To understand why the prince is both revealing and dangerous, we first need to step into Machiavelli's shoes. He wasn't a professor sitting safely in a study. He was a man caught in the chaos of Renaissance Italy, a time when city-states like Florence, Venice, and Milan were constantly at war with each other, while foreign powers like France and Spain treated Italy like a chessboard. Machiavelli worked as a diplomat for the Florentine Republic, traveling across Europe, meeting kings, popes, generals, and mercenaries. He saw firsthand how leaders gained and lost power. He saw how treaties could be broken overnight, how promises meant nothing once armies marched, and how morality was often the first casualty of politics. He wasn't theorizing, he was observing. His book reflects lived experience, not ivory tower philosophy. But then, his life fell apart. In 1512, the Medici family took back control of Florence. Machiavelli was thrown out of office, accused of conspiracy, arrested, and tortured. When he was finally released, he was unemployed, disgraced, and desperate. It was in this exile that he wrote The Prince. On one level, it may have been an attempt to win back the Medici's favor by showing he could be useful. But on another level, it was something far more radical, a book that tore away the polite illusions of power and said the quiet part out loud. The shock of The Prince. When people first read The Prince, they were horrified. Here was a man saying that rulers should not keep promises if breaking them was more useful. Here was someone suggesting that cruelty, if used correctly, could be more effective than kindness. Here was a thinker saying it was safer to be feared than loved. To a world that still thought kings ruled with divine guidance and Christian morality, this was a slap in the face. But think about it another way. Maybe Machiavelli wasn't endorsing cruelty, lying, or manipulation. Maybe he was exposing it. By writing these strategies down so openly, he was telling readers, look, this is how rulers actually behave, no matter what sermons they give. It's like someone publishing the secret rulebook that powerful people use while pretending to play fair. That's why Machiavelli has always been controversial. Was he helping tyrants, or was he warning citizens? The answer might be both. His genius lies in the double edge of his writing. To rulers, it could look like advice. To citizens, it could look like a mirror. And in that mirror, people could finally see the ugly truths of power that had always been hidden. Double readings, manual or mirror. This is the heart of Machiavelli's warning. How you read The Prince depends on where you're standing. For a ruler, it can be read as a handbook. For a citizen, it can be read as a survival guide. Knowledge of how rulers manipulate, so you can recognize the tricks before they're used on you. Take, for example, his idea of appearing virtuous. He tells rulers that it's essential to look honest, merciful, and religious, but not to actually be those things if it puts their power at risk. To a ruler, this is advice: cultivate the mask, don't worry about the reality. But to an ordinary person, it's a warning. Don't be fooled by appearances, because leaders use morality as theater. Machiavelli essentially pulled the curtain back on politics and said, "You see that? They're actors. They're playing a role. And you're the audience they're trying to control." The fact that both rulers and citizens could read his book and take different lessons from it is why it survived for 5 centuries and why it still feels dangerous today. Fear and the politics of control. Perhaps the most infamous line from The Prince is Machiavelli's claim that it is safer for a ruler to be feared than loved. At first glance, it sounds monstrous, but when you think about it, it's brutally logical. Love is voluntary and can fade. Fear, if carefully managed, can be constant and predictable. For rulers, this advice is about control. If your subjects fear the consequences of disobedience, you don't have to rely on their affection. But for citizens, this line is more of a red flag. It says, if you feel like your government is trying to make you afraid of outsiders, of enemies, of each other, it might not be an accident. Fear is a tool of governance. Once you see fear this way, you notice it everywhere. Leaders manufacture crises, amplify threats, or find scapegoats to keep people anxious and dependent. When fear dominates, citizens cling to authority, even when that authority is abusive. Machiavelli's warning helps us step back and ask, am I afraid because danger is real, or because someone wants me to be? That's the kind of knowledge you're not supposed to have. Virtue, fortune, and the illusion of morality. Another way Machiavelli shattered illusions was through his redefinition of virtue. In Christian Europe, virtue meant being humble, generous, and moral. But Machiavelli's virtù meant something else entirely. The ability to bend fortune to your will through boldness, cunning, and strength. This was revolutionary. He was saying that morality doesn't win kingdoms, power does. A ruler who clings to doing the right thing without considering strategy is likely to lose everything. To rulers, this was liberating. They could drop the burden of moral perfection. But to citizens, it was terrifying. It meant that the values they thought guided their leaders might just be costumes, worn only when convenient. And then there's fortuna. Fortune, chance, the unpredictable chaos of life. Machiavelli warned that rulers who rely too heavily on luck are doomed. Instead, they must master chance by being adaptable, ruthless, and decisive. To citizens, the hidden lesson is this: when leaders succeed, it's not because God blessed them or because they're especially virtuous. It's because they knew how to seize opportunities and crush obstacles. Again, you're not supposed to know this, because it strips away the comforting myths that leaders use to justify power. why you're not supposed to know this. Here we reach the essence of the warning. Knowledge about how power really works is destabilizing. If people believe leaders are moral guardians, they're easier to govern. But if they realize leaders are just skilled manipulators, the foundation of authority cracks. That's why Machiavelli's book has been feared and censored for centuries. It's not just a manual for rulers, it's an X-ray of politics itself. It shows the bones, the hidden machinery, the tricks. And once you've seen those, you can't go back to believing in the fairy tale of noble leadership. Machiavelli risked his reputation to put this knowledge into the open. And the very fact that his name has become a synonym for evil or scheming, Machiavellian, proves how threatening his honesty was. His warning wasn't just about princes, it was about politics as a whole. Machiavelli's legacy, from tyrants to citizens. Over the centuries, Machiavelli has been read by both tyrants and freedom fighters. Dictators have loved him because he shows them how to maintain control. But revolutionaries have also loved him because he exposes the tactics. He belongs to both sides because his writing is a mirror, showing everyone what they want to see, but also reflecting truths they'd rather ignore. In modern politics, his fingerprints are everywhere. Leaders still cultivate appearances, stage moments of morality, and deploy fear strategically. Citizens still wrestle with how much of this to tolerate, and how much to resist. To read Machiavelli today is to gain a kind of immunity, a defense against manipulation. But it also comes at a cost. Once you know these truths, it's hard to trust leaders again. That's the final twist of his warning. Knowledge is empowering, but also unsettling. You gain clarity, but you lose innocence. You can see through illusions, but you also see how deep they run. Conclusion. You're not supposed to know this. Machiavelli's warning captures the danger and brilliance of the prince. Machiavelli stripped politics down to its core, revealing fear as a weapon, morality as a mask, and power as the only real currency. His words weren't just instructions for rulers, they were revelations for citizens. And those revelations are still just as unsettling today as they were 500 years ago. The warning is simple. Once you understand how power operates, you can never unsee it. Leaders survive on appearances, myths, and illusions. To know the truth makes you harder to govern, harder to fool, and harder to control. That's why you're not supposed to know this. Machiavelli gave us the knowledge anyway. The question is, what do we do with it?